Hannah sat on the floor, her breath still ragged, staring up at the man who had just saved her life. He flicked on a small lantern, casting a dim glow around the cramped room. His features came into focus. A man in his mid-30s, face etched with exhaustion, but his eyes sharp and alert.
I'm Rick.
He said, offering a hand to help her up.
You're lucky I saw you when I did. They would have torn you apart.
Hanna took his hand, pulling herself to her feet. Her legs felt weak and her mind was spinning.
What are those things?
She asked, trying to steady her breathing. Rick's face darkened.
We call them the Lost. Used to be people once. No one knows exactly what happened, but something changed them. They roam the streets at night, hunting anything that moves. They don't stop, don't reason. Their bodies are dead, but something else drives them now.
He rubbed his face, looking like a man carrying the weight of too many sleepless nights.
Daylight's the only time they disappear. It's like they can't survive in it.
Hanna swallowed hard, her mouth dry. The memories of the twisted faces and grotesque grins flashed in her mind. She leaned against the wall, trying to process it all.
And this town, why is it so empty? What happened here?
Rick shook his head.
Most people either ran when things started getting bad or ended up like them. Those of us still alive are few and far between. You came out of that hospital, right? Do you remember how you got there?
Hanna hesitated, her heart sinking.
No, I don't remember anything. Not where I'm from, how I ended up in the hospital. Nothing. I don't even know how long I've been here. I just woke up on a gurney and everything feels wrong.
She pressed her palms against her temples, willing the fog in her mind to clear, but it remained stubbornly thick. Rick frowned, watching her closely.
Amnesia?
Yeah, I can't remember anything before waking up.
Rick sat down across from her, his gaze thoughtful.
You could have been here for days, weeks even. That hospital's been empty for months now. Whoever brought you there might have left you behind when everything started going downhill.
Hanna shivered. The idea that she had been lying there, vulnerable with those things just outside, made her stomach churn. Rick said, his tone firm.
We'll figure it out, but for now, survival comes first. Daylight is in about 4 hours. When the sun's up, we'll gather supplies. Food, water, weapons, anything we can find.
Hanna nodded, though a knot of fear twisted in her gut.
What do we do until then?
Stay quiet, keep the lights low, and pray they don't notice us.
Rick's voice was grim as he moved toward a boarded-up window. He peeked through a gap in the wood, his face tense.
They don't usually come this way unless something draws them in.
Hours passed in tense silence, the air thick with unspoken fear. Hanna sat against the wall, her mind racing. She tried to remember anything from before waking up, but it was like hitting a wall every time. Nothing surfaced, not a single memory. The moment dawn broke, Rick led her outside. The town was just as eerie in the daylight, abandoned, still, as if frozen in time. But the creatures were gone, as Rick had said. The only signs of them were the deep scratches in the asphalt and dried blood splattered on walls.
Let's move quickly. We don't know how long we have.
They made their way through the town, slipping into empty stores and houses, gathering canned food, bottled water, and whatever tools they could find. A hammer, some kitchen knives. Rudimentary, but better than nothing. By the time the sun began to sink low on the horizon, they had stocked up on essentials, and Rick led them back to the small house.
You'll need this,
He said, handing Hanna a flashlight and one of the knives.
in case something happens tonight. I don't know how close we'll cut it, but better to be prepared.
As darkness fell, the familiar tension returned, like a weight pressing down on them. Rick boarded up the last of the windows more securely, leaving just a small gap for them to see out.
I hope this holds.
Hanna sat near the door, her knife clutched tightly in her hands. Hours passed again, and Hanna fought the creeping exhaustion, her eyelids heavy. The silence stretched on, the only sounds their occasional breaths and the faint creaks of the house settling. Suddenly, a loud scraping noise outside snapped her awake. Her grip tightened on the knife, her heart pounding.
Stay quiet.
Rick motioned for her to stay quiet. He moved to the window, peeking out through the gap, his body tensed.
They're here.
He whispered, his voice tight. Hannah's blood ran cold. The scraping grew louder, more insistent. Then a low, guttural growl echoed outside the door, followed by the sound of something heavy slamming against the wood. Rick rushed to the door, reinforcing it with the dining table, his face pale.
Get ready,
He muttered, holding his own weapon, a crowbar, at the ready. The banging grew louder, more frantic. The creatures were slamming into the house now, their growls rising in pitch. Wood splintered as their claws raked across the door.
We have to hold them off.
Rick shouted over the noise. Hanna scrambled to her feet, adrenaline surging through her veins. She braced herself, watching as the door buckled under the weight of the attack. Suddenly, one of the creatures burst through a weak spot in the boards, its grotesque face peering through the gap, eyes wide and unblinking. It snarled, thrusting its clawed hand inside.
Get back.
Rick shouted, swinging the crowbar at the creature's arm. Hanna stumbled backward, gripping her knife with trembling hands, her breath coming in short gasps. Just as the door looked ready to give way entirely, a faint light began to creep through the cracks of the boarded-up windows. The sky outside was beginning to brighten. The monsters howled in fury, retreating as the first rays of sunlight touched the house. Within moments, they were gone. Rick slumped against the wall, panting.
That was too close.
Hanna sank to the floor beside him, her heart still racing. She looked at the shattered door, the claw marks and the splinters scattered across the floor.
They're getting bolder.
Rick muttered, wiping the sweat from his brow. Hanna stared out at the rising sun, dread building in her chest.
How long do we have before they come back?